There was a time when America depended on giants. Not machines, not engines. Horses. Massive horses that could pull loads most people would never believe, working from sunrise until long after sunset. They hauled timber from deep forests, pulled wagons loaded with grain across rough dirt roads, and helped build farms, towns, and entire communities before tractors ever changed the landscape. Today, most people have never even seen one in real life, and every year, that becomes even more likely. One of the greatest working horses ever bred is quietly disappearing, not because it stopped being useful overnight, but because the world around it changed faster than anyone expected. The Shire horse is more than just big. It is one of the largest horse breeds on Earth, famous for incredible strength, calm temperament, and a history stretching back hundreds of years. Standing beside one can make a full-grown adult feel surprisingly small. Their shoulders tower above most riding horses, and their powerful legs carry hundreds of kilograms of muscle with remarkable grace. But despite all that history and strength, their numbers fell so dramatically that conservation groups began warning the breed could disappear if nothing changed. How did one of history's greatest horses end up fighting simply to survive? To understand that story, we have to go back to a time before engines, before highways, and before horsepower became something measured. For centuries, the Shire horse was the engine that kept entire communities moving. Long before diesel trucks and modern tractors, these gentle giants handled the hardest jobs people could imagine. A single horse could pull enormous wagons loaded with supplies, move heavy tree trunks from forests, and work long days in fields where machines couldn't yet go. What made the Shire so remarkable wasn't just its size, it was its personality. Despite their immense strength, these horses earned a reputation for being calm, patient, and willing to work. Farmers trusted them around children. Teamsters relied on them to navigate crowded streets. Their steady temperament made them just as valuable as their powerful muscles. As cities expanded during the 1800s, demand for these horses exploded. Breweries used them to pull wagons stacked with heavy barrels. Construction crews depended on them to move stone, timber, and equipment. On farms, they plowed fields, hauled harvests, and carried out jobs that would have taken dozens of people working by hand. By the late 19th century, owning a good Shire horse wasn't simply a luxury. For many families, it was the difference between a successful harvest and financial hardship. Breeders carefully selected horses for strength, soundness, and a calm disposition, creating animals that became famous around the world. Then everything began to change. The first signs seemed harmless. Small gasoline engines appeared on farms. Steam-powered machines improved. New technology promised to save time and reduce labor. At first, many farmers believed horses and machines would work side by side forever. They were wrong. Within just a few decades, tractors became faster, cheaper to operate, and capable of working longer hours without rest. Trucks replaced horse-drawn freight. Roads improved. Businesses modernized. One by one, the jobs that had sustained the Shire horse for generations simply disappeared. By the early 20th century, the decline of the Shire horse had begun in a way few people could have predicted. A breed that had once filled the streets of England with the sound of heavy hooves was suddenly becoming a symbol of a disappearing way of life. Thousands of Shires that once worked every day on farms, in cities, and in transport were no longer needed. Farmers began replacing teams of horses with tractors. Companies that once depended on horsepower switched to trucks and engines. The demand for working horses collapsed faster than anyone expected. For breeders, the situation became devastating. Raising a Shire was expensive. These horses required large amounts of food, space, and care. When there were fewer jobs available for them, fewer people were willing to invest in breeding them. The numbers began to fall. During their peak, Shire horses were counted in the hundreds of thousands. But as the machines took over, their population dropped dramatically. By the middle of the 20th century, the breed was facing a crisis that threatened its very existence. Some people believed the Shire would disappear completely, but a small group of dedicated breeders refused to let that happen. They saw something beyond the usefulness of the breed. They saw history. They saw a connection to generations of farmers, craftsmen, and communities who had depended on these horses. To them, the Shire was not just a working animal. It was a living piece of heritage. Organizations were formed to protect the breed. Breeding programs focused on preserving the strongest bloodlines. Enthusiasts began showing Shires at agricultural events, reminding the public of their incredible beauty, size, and gentle nature. Slowly, the Shire found a new purpose: to do. Instead of pulling delivery wagons through busy streets, they began appearing in parades, traditional farming demonstrations, and conservation projects. Some returned to forests, where their ability to move timber without damaging the land made them valuable once again. Their role had changed, but their importance had not disappeared. Today, seeing a Shire horse in person is a reminder of a different world, a world where strength came from muscle, patience, and trust between humans and animals. But despite their renewed popularity among enthusiasts, the Shire remains one of the rarest heavy horse breeds on Earth. And the biggest question remains: can this gentle giant survive in a world that no longer needs horses for the jobs they were created to do? The future of the Shire horse depends on something more powerful than machines: people's willingness to remember their value. Unlike many animals that disappeared because they could not adapt, the Shire survived because a small number of people believed it was worth saving. Breeders, historians, farmers, and horse lovers around the world have worked together to protect this incredible breed and keep its bloodlines alive. But preserving a giant horse is not easy. A Shire can stand over 17 hands tall and weigh more than a small car. Keeping an animal of that size requires enormous amounts of food, proper care, and experienced handling. As fewer people grow up around working horses, there are fewer new owners with the knowledge needed to maintain them. Another challenge is finding a purpose for the modern Shire. A horse that once delivered supplies, pulled heavy carts, and worked from sunrise to sunset now lives in a world of engines and technology. Today, breeders must find new ways for these horses to connect with people. Fortunately, the Shire's greatest strength was never only its power. It was its character. These horses are known for their calm behavior, intelligence, and willingness to cooperate with humans. Many owners describe them as gentle giants because, despite their enormous size, they often have the patience and kindness of a much smaller animal. They appear at heritage events, educational programs, traditional farming demonstrations, and even environmentally friendly forestry projects, where horses can move through sensitive areas without damaging the ground like heavy machinery can. In many ways, the Shire represents something the modern world often forgets: not everything valuable needs to be faster, cheaper, or more efficient. Some things are valuable because they connect us to where we came from. Every Shire horse alive today carries the story of thousands of horses that came before it. They represent the farmers who depended on them, the cities they helped build, and the generations of people who formed a partnership with these remarkable animals. But their survival is still not guaranteed. If interest disappears, breeding slows down, and fewer people choose to protect the breed, the Shire could slowly fade into history. The giant horse that once powered nations could become nothing more than a memory in old photographs and history books. But if people continue to admire, breed, and work with these horses, the Shire can remain a symbol of strength, loyalty, and the incredible bond between humans and animals. Because the Shire horse was never just a machine with 4 legs. It was a partner, a worker, a friend, and perhaps the greatest reminder that sometimes the things we no longer need are the things we should never lose.